shadow of betrayal. The conference hall erupted in applause as Julian Pierce concluded his keynote speech at the annual Tech Vision Summit. His tall figure commanded the stage with practiced ease, tailored suit accentuating his confident posture. At 35, Julian had achieved what many tech entrepreneurs only dreamed of, founding and leading Horizon Innovations to a valuation exceeding $9 billion. "Julian, one question about the Norton project failure?" a journalist called out from the crowd. Julian's practiced smile didn't falter. "The Norton project was unfortunate, but as I've made clear, my former partner Cassandra Vega made critical miscalculations that cost the company millions. I trusted her judgment, perhaps too much." His voice carried perfectly through the hall, the slight regretful tone masterfully deployed. Sitting in the back row, Cassandra Vega gripped her tablet so tightly her knuckles whitened. At 32, her once promising career lay in ruins, her reputation tarnished by Julian's calculated betrayal. 3 years of partnership, 18 months of romance, and one failed project later, he had systematically dismantled everything they'd built together. "He never even mentioned the altered specifications," she whispered to herself, watching as Julian continued fielding questions, the audience eating from his palm. The Norton project had failed not because of her marketing strategy, as he claimed, but because Julian had secretly changed the product specifications to cut costs without informing her team. The truth hardly mattered now. When the project imploded, Julian had moved swiftly, calling an emergency board meeting while she was overseas troubleshooting with clients. By the time she returned, the narrative had been established. Cassandra Vega, the marketing wunderkind, had overreached and cost Horizon Innovations nearly $30 million. She slipped out of the conference hall before Julian concluded, unable to stomach any more of his performance. Outside, Seattle's persistent drizzle matched her mood as she hailed a rideshare. "Where to?" the driver asked cheerfully. "Airport? Please," Cassandra replied, her voice steady despite the emotional turmoil. Her apartment was already emptied, belongings shipped to a storage unit. There was nothing left for her in Seattle except painful memories and closed doors. Her phone buzzed with a news notification. Horizon Innovations stock soars after CEO Julian Pierce announces restructuring. The accompanying photo showed Julian's satisfied smile, the picture of success and confidence. Cassandra closed the notification and opened her email instead. The response from Takumi Watanabe, her former mentor at business school, awaited her. "Cassandra, I've reviewed your proposal. Your ideas on sustainable tech integration are solid. Come to Singapore. My incubator has room for someone with your vision. The business world has a short memory for failure, but remembers innovation forever. This isn't your end. It's your beginning." For the first time in months, Cassandra felt something other than despair or rage. A tiny spark of possibility flickered to life. "Would you mind changing the destination?" she asked the driver. "Take me to Fremont instead." 30 minutes later, she stood before the modest brick building housing Amelia Rodriguez's office. Amelia, a brilliant patent attorney and longtime friend, was one of the few who had stood by Cassandra after the Norton disaster. "I'm going to Singapore," Cassandra announced as she entered Amelia's office. Amelia looked up from her desk, her expression shifting from surprise to understanding. "You're taking Takumi's offer?" "Yes. But before I go, I need your help with something." Cassandra pulled out her tablet, opening files she'd secretly downloaded before being escorted from Horizon's offices. "I need to protect these ideas, my ideas, that Julian doesn't even know exist." "You realize he'll come after you if you develop anything similar to Horizon's projects," Amelia cautioned. Cassandra's smile held a determination that had been absent for months. "These aren't similar to Horizon's work. They're beyond anything Julian's unimaginative mind could conceive. He built an empire on my creativity once. Never again." As rain drummed against the windows, Cassandra and Amelia worked through the night. securing the foundation of what would become Cassandra's redemption. 3 years of humiliation had taught her patience. 5,000 miles of distance would give her perspective. And one day, Julian Pierce would learn exactly what he had lost when he decided to build his success on her downfall. Silent reinvention, Singapore's humid air clung to Cassandra's skin as she stepped onto the balcony of her modest apartment. 3 years had passed since she'd left Seattle with nothing but determination and Takumi's promise of a fresh start. The city-state's glittering skyline reflected in her coffee cup, a daily reminder of how far she had come. Impressive progress on the Helix prototype, Takumi's voice came through her earpiece. At 62, the Japanese-Singaporean investor rarely gave praise freely, making his words all the more valuable. The biomaterials team finally solved the degradation issue, Cassandra replied, watching the early morning traffic flow beneath her building. We should have a working model by next quarter. Her new venture, Phoenix Sustainable Solutions, had begun as a small research team operating from Takumi's incubator. Now it occupied 3 floors in a downtown building, employing 97 of the brightest minds in sustainable technology. Their first product, an eco-friendly packaging solution derived from agricultural waste, had already disrupted the market. The Helix energy storage system would be their breakthrough into the renewable energy sector. Have you seen the latest about Horizon? Takumi asked casually. Cassandra tensed slightly. Despite her promise to herself, she still monitored Julian's company religiously. The Anderson partnership fell through. Third major deal collapsed this year. Pierce is losing his touch. She remained silent, remembering Julian's triumphant face at that conference years ago. Since then, Horizon had stagnated, resting on past innovations rather than pioneering new ones. Without her creative direction, Julian had steered the company towards safer, more conventional products. Profitable, but hardly revolutionary. Their stock dropped 17% yesterday, Takumi continued. Rumor has it their board is getting restless. Horizon still has a market cap of $11 billion, Cassandra reminded him, and herself. They're hardly on the brink, perhaps, but they're vulnerable for the first time since you left. After ending the call, Cassandra opened her secure folder containing the Odysseus Project, her most ambitious and secretive initiative. Named after the legendary Greek king who reclaimed his kingdom through patience and cunning, it represented everything she had learned during her exile. Later that afternoon, Cassandra walked through Phoenix's research department, where Dr. Olivia Nguyen was demonstrating their latest breakthrough to potential investors. The nanomaterials absorb pollutants while generating clean energy, Olivia explained, her enthusiasm infectious as she showed the microscopic structures on the large screen. Nothing like this exists on the market, because everyone said it was impossible, added Daniel Okafor, Phoenix's brilliant chemical engineer who had defected from a petroleum giant. Until Cassandra pushed us to try anyway. The investors exchanged impressed glances. At the back of the room, Cassandra watched with quiet satisfaction. Her team believed in impossible things because she had created a culture that rewarded innovation over caution, the exact opposite of what Julian's Horizon had become. That evening, as Cassandra reviewed quarterly projections, her secure phone, used only for her most confidential communications, vibrated. "It's happening," said Amelia Rodriguez, now Phoenix's chief legal officer. "Horizon's board called an emergency meeting tomorrow. My source says 3 directors are pushing to replace Julian as CEO. Cassandra set down her tablet. "Who's the replacement candidate?" "Rebecca Winters." "Their CFO? Interesting." Winters was competent but conservative, exactly what Phoenix needed Horizon to become. "Keep me updated. Is it time for Odysseus?" Amelia asked, her voice cautious. Cassandra looked out at Singapore's night skyline, remembering the rainy Seattle day when Julian had destroyed her reputation with calculated precision. Not yet. But prepare the preliminary documentation. When Horizon starts to crumble, we'll be ready. 3 days later, International Business News headlines announced, Horizon Innovations retains Julian Pierce as CEO following board. Challenge. The accompanying article detailed how Pierce had barely survived the vote of confidence. Cassandra, forwarded the article to Takumi with a single comment. Phase 1 complete. Julian was now weakened but still in charge. The perfect combination for what would come next. That night, she worked until dawn on the final specifications for the Helix system. Unlike the failed Norton project, this technology wouldn't just improve lives, it would transform entire industries. And unlike Julian, she had built redundancies into every aspect of Phoenix. No single person, including herself, was indispensable. As sunrise painted Singapore's towers in gold, Cassandra finally allowed herself a moment of pure anticipation. In Seattle, Julian was fighting to maintain his grip on an empire beginning to slip through his fingers. Here, 6,000 miles away, she was building something he couldn't begin to comprehend. The empire she would use to reclaim everything she had lost, and more. Rising from ashes, the Wall Street Journal headline blazed across digital platforms worldwide. Phoenix soars, sustainable tech startup secures. $1.2 billion in funding round. The accompanying photograph showed Cassandra in a sleek charcoal suit, standing confidently beside Takumi and their lead investors at the New York Stock Exchange. 5 years after leaving Seattle in disgrace, Cassandra Vega had transformed from industry pariah to sustainable technology pioneer. Phoenix's revolutionary energy storage systems had made fossil fuel dependence increasingly obsolete in developing markets, and their biodegradable packaging solutions had been adopted by 3 major global retailers. Ms. Vega, what's your response to critics who say Phoenix's valuation is overinflated? Called out a reporter during the press conference following the funding announcement. Cassandra smiled with practiced ease. Our valuation reflects our proven technologies, established market share across 16 countries, and our innovation pipeline. Unlike some companies that maintain their value through reputation alone, Phoenix delivers measurable impact and consistent returns. The subtle dig at Horizon wasn't lost on industry insiders. Julian's company had posted declining revenues for 3 consecutive quarters, their stock price dropping nearly 40% from its peak. Their latest product launch, a smart home system that many reviewers deemed derivative, had failed to generate significant market enthusiasm. Back in her Manhattan hotel suite after the press conference, Cassandra kicked off her heels and accepted a glass of champagne from Amelia. To the woman who rose from the ashes, Amelia toasted, her eyes reflecting pride in her friend's accomplishments. We're not done yet, Cassandra replied, though she allowed herself to clink glasses. How's our position? Amelia set down her champagne and opened her tablet. With today's funding round, we have sufficient capital for the acquisition. Our analysts project Horizon's stock will drop another 12 to 15% when they announce quarterly results next week. And the Odysseus project? Ready when you are. We've quietly accumulated 7% of Horizon's shares through various investment vehicles. The moment their stock tumbles, we can begin aggressive acquisition. Cassandra nodded, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and an unexpected melancholy. 5 years ago, all she had wanted was revenge against Julian. Now, with Phoenix thriving beyond her initial vision, that motivation felt smaller, less defining. Have you seen their new product lineup? Amelia asked, scrolling through her tablet. They're desperately trying to enter the sustainable technology space. Too little, too late. Julian never understood that sustainability isn't just marketing, it's fundamental restructuring, Cassandra said, remembering their arguments years ago. She had pushed for Horizon to pioneer green technology. He had dismissed it as a passing trend. Her phone rang. Olivia Nguyen from R&D. We've got confirmation, her research director said without preamble. Our hydrogen conversion process is 12 times more efficient than the nearest competitor. Patent applications are ready to file globally. Proceed, Cassandra authorized. And Olivia? Excellent work. Another piece of the Odysseus project falling into place. The following week, Cassandra returned to Singapore just as Horizon announced its worst quarterly results in company history. Their stock plummeted 23% in a single day. Financial analysts began openly questioning Julian Pierce's leadership, with several suggesting the company should consider strategic alternatives, business euphemism for putting itself up for sale. From her office overlooking Marina Bay, Cassandra watched global markets react to Horizon's downfall. On her secure monitor, the Odysseus project dashboard tracked Phoenix's covert acquisition of Horizon shares, now approaching 15%. Julian's called an all-hands meeting, reported Daniel, who maintained contacts at Horizon. Word is he's announcing major layoffs. Cassandra felt a pang for the employees who would suffer for Julian's failures. Identify key talent at risk. Offer them positions at Phoenix. Already on it, Daniel confirmed. Several of their top engineers have reached out through back channels. That evening, as Cassandra finalized Phoenix's expansion into European markets, her secure phone lit up with a message from Takumi. Pierce seeking emergency funding. Approaching our mutual acquaintance, their mutual acquaintance, Graham Wallace, a venture capitalist who had once dismissed Cassandra's business proposal, but had eagerly invested in Phoenix's third funding round. The irony wasn't lost on her. Time for the next phase, she texted back. 3 days later, Cassandra stood before Phoenix's executive team in their Singapore headquarters. The room hummed with anticipation as she revealed the full scope of the Odysseus project. For 5 years, we've built something revolutionary, she told them, her voice steady and determined. Now we're going to use it to reshape the industry entirely. Phoenix will acquire Horizon Innovations. The audacious announcement generated precisely the reaction she had anticipated, shock followed by excitement. Even those who had known pieces of the plan seemed stunned by its scope and ambition. They're 4 times our size, ventured their CFO, Thomas Wong. By market cap, yes, Cassandra acknowledged. But our revenue growth is exponential while theirs is negative. Our technologies are patent protected while theirs are increasingly obsolete. And most importantly, she paused, allowing the moment its due weight. Their CEO has lost the confidence of his board, his investors, and his employees. As her team processed the bold strategy, Cassandra gazed out at Singapore's futuristic skyline. Tomorrow, the business world would awaken to news that would shake the tech industry to its foundations. And somewhere in Seattle, Julian Pierce would finally understand exactly what he had set in motion when he betrayed her all those years ago. The empire he had stolen was about to become hers. Tables turned, the Seattle rain pelted against the windows of Horizon Innovations headquarters as Julian Pierce faced the most humiliating board meeting of his career. At 40, his once youthful confidence had hardened into something brittle and defensive. The tailored suit couldn't hide the strain of the past months, sleepless nights trying to reverse the company's decline, desperate meetings with increasingly skeptical investors. This hostile takeover attempt by Phoenix is unprecedented, he insisted, pacing before the somber-faced directors. We've built Horizon from nothing into a global technology leader. We can't let some upstart sustainable energy company dismantle everything we've accomplished. Rebecca Winters, the CFO who had nearly replaced him years earlier, glanced at the financial projections displayed on the wall screen. Phoenix's offer represents a 40% premium over our current share price, Julian. Many shareholders are already signaling support. It's Cassandra Vega, he snapped, his composure cracking. This is personal. She's been planning this for years. The uncomfortable silence that followed confirmed what Julian had feared. His board was seriously considering Phoenix's acquisition offer. The business press had exploded with the news 3 days ago. Phoenix rises, sustainable tech pioneer launches. Bid for struggling Horizon Innovations. Financial analysts almost universally praised the move as visionary and strategically sound. Mr. Pierce, began Wallace Chen, the newest board member, with respect, Phoenix's growth trajectory and technological innovations speak for themselves. Their hydrogen conversion technology alone is valued higher than our entire product lineup. Perhaps we should consider what's best for shareholders rather than past personal conflicts. Julian stared at the man, betrayal burning in his chest. I built this company. You and Ms. Vega built it, corrected Teresa Hernandez, the longest-serving director. And while you've led admirably for many years, we must acknowledge that Horizon has lost its innovative edge. Phoenix is offering our shareholders a lifeline when we're taking on water. The meeting concluded without a formal vote, but Julian could read the writing on the wall. Outside in the hallway, employees huddled in small groups, discussing their futures in hushed tones. They fell silent as he passed, their expressions a mixture of pity and resentment. In his corner office, Julian poured himself 3 fingers of scotch despite the early hour. His assistant entered cautiously. "Sir, Ms. Vega's representatives have arrived for the preliminary discussions. The board asked me to inform you." Julian's hand tightened around his glass. "They're proceeding without a vote?" "They voted by email after you left, sir. 9-1 in favor of entertaining Phoenix's offer." After his assistant departed, Julian unlocked his private safe and removed a worn file, his contingency plans for various worst-case scenarios. He had never seriously believed he would need the one labeled hostile acquisition. His phone lit up with a message from Rebecca. "Cassandra Vega will be arriving personally tomorrow to oversee negotiations. Board requests your cooperation." Julian laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the empty office. Of course Cassandra would come herself. This moment of triumph was 7 years in the making. The following morning, Horizon's executive conference room crackled with tension. Julian arrived deliberately last, making Cassandra and her team wait, a petty power play that felt hollow even to him. The moment he entered, conversations ceased, all eyes turning to witness the reunion of former partners now positioned as adversary and victor. Cassandra sat at the head of the table, his spot, looking nothing like the devastated woman who had fled Seattle years ago. Her charcoal suit and confident posture projected authority, her expression professionally neutral despite the history crackling between them. "Julian," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "Thank you for joining us." He took the only remaining seat at the opposite end of the table. "Hardly had a choice, did I?" "There are always choices," she replied evenly. "Phoenix values Horizon's foundational technologies and market position. This acquisition benefits both companies' shareholders and positions us to lead the industry transformation toward sustainable solutions." The corporate language was perfect, appropriate for the lawyers and board members present. But Julian heard the subtext clearly. "You destroyed what we built together." "Now I'm taking it back. Perhaps we should review the proposed integration plan," suggested Takumi Watanabe, seated at Cassandra's right. As Phoenix's team outlined their vision for combining the companies, Julian studied Cassandra. The 7 years had changed her, hardened certain aspects while softening others. The vengeful fury he had expected wasn't visible. Instead, she exhibited the composed confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. When the meeting concluded 2 hours later, executives filtered out until only Julian and Cassandra remained, the weight of their shared history filling the space between them. "Congratulations," he said finally, the word sharp with bitterness. "You've orchestrated quite the revenge." Cassandra gathered her documents unhurriedly. "This isn't about revenge, Julian. It never was. Bullshit. You've spent years planning this takeover." She looked at him directly, her gaze steady. "I spent years building something meaningful, something that matters beyond market cap and quarterly profits. Phoenix exists because you taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Never again would I allow someone else to define my worth or control my future. So, destroying me is just a convenient side effect?" He challenged. "You destroyed yourself," she replied quietly, "when you chose short-term gain over sustainable innovation. When you sacrificed integrity for convenience. I'm not here to ruin you, Julian. I'm here because Phoenix needs Horizon's distribution network, and your shareholders need Phoenix's growth potential." As she moved toward the door, Julian called out, "The board hasn't formally approved anything yet. I can still fight this." Cassandra paused, turning back with an expression that wasn't triumph or anger, but something more complex, perhaps even compassion. "You could," she acknowledged, "but for what purpose? To preserve pride at the expense of everyone who depends on this company? That's exactly why we're here today." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Julian alone in the conference room where, years ago, he had orchestrated Cassandra's downfall. Outside the windows, Seattle's persistent rain had given way to unexpected sunshine breaking through the clouds. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. Beyond victory. The announcement dominated business headlines worldwide. Phoenix completes acquisition of Horizon. Innovations in tech industry's most significant merger of the decade. Financial analysts praised the strategic combination of Phoenix's cutting-edge, sustainable technologies with Horizon's established market presence and distribution networks. Wall Street responded with enthusiasm, the newly merged company's stock rising 15% on its first trading day. For Cassandra, standing before hundreds of employees in Horizon's Seattle headquarters, the victory felt both larger and smaller than she had imagined during those dark days after Julian had orchestrated her downfall. This merger represents not the end of two companies, but the beginning of something greater, she told the anxious faces before her. Every person in this room brings valuable expertise to our combined mission. There will be no mass layoffs, no wholesale dismantling of what you've built. Instead, we will integrate strengths from both organizations to lead the industry's transition to sustainable technologies. From the back of the auditorium, Julian watched her address, his expression unreadable. He had accepted a transitional role as strategic advisor, a position that preserved his dignity while gradually transferring his responsibilities to Phoenix's leadership team. The board had made it clear: cooperate or leave with nothing. Later that evening, as rain returned to Seattle's skyline, Cassandra stood in what had been Julian's office, now temporarily hers while she oversaw the integration process. The view of Puget Sound stretched before her, the same vista she had gazed upon when they had founded Horizon together nearly a decade ago. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Julian entered without waiting for permission, old habits dying hard. "The Tokyo team is on board with the restructuring," he said, setting a tablet on the desk, though Watanabe's handling of their concerns was unnecessarily heavy-handed. "Takumi has his methods," Cassandra replied, turning to face her former partner. "But I'll speak with him." An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of their complicated history. "I've been reviewing the Norton project files," Julian said finally. "You were right about the specification changes." "I knew it then, too." Cassandra raised an eyebrow, surprised by the admission. "Why bring that up now?" "Because understanding how we got here matters." He moved to the window, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the wet streets below. "I convinced myself I was protecting the company. That sacrificing one person, even you, was justifiable if it preserved what we'd built. And now? And now you own the company I was trying to save." A hint of his old wry smile flickered across his face. There's probably a Greek tragedy in there somewhere. Despite everything, Cassandra found herself smiling slightly. More like a cautionary business school case study. Julian turned to face her, his expression serious. "What happens now, Cassandra?" "You've won. You've taken everything. Is that enough?" The question hung between them, forcing Cassandra to confront the truth she'd been avoiding since the acquisition became reality. Revenge had been her initial motivation years ago, but somewhere along the way, building Phoenix, creating technologies that genuinely improved lives, leading a company that valued innovation and integrity equally, the goal had transformed. "This was never about taking everything from you," she said finally. "It was about creating something that couldn't be taken from me." "And you have," Julian acknowledged. "Phoenix's hydrogen technology alone is revolutionary. The sustainable packaging solutions, remarkable. You've built something I couldn't imagine when we were partners." "Because you were looking backward while I was forced to look forward," Cassandra replied, no accusation in her tone, just recognition of their different paths. "Failure gave me freedom. Success made you cautious." Julian nodded slowly. "And where does that leave us?" "At a crossroads," she said. "Your technical expertise is valuable, Julian. Your market instincts, your understanding of Horizon's architecture, these are assets that could benefit the merged company significantly. Are you offering me a real position? Not just the advisory role the board created to ease the transition?" Cassandra studied him carefully, weighing 7 years of bitterness against the practical reality before her. I'm offering you the opportunity to earn one, not based on our history or your name, but on what you can contribute going forward. Under your leadership, he noted, a statement rather than a question. Yes, she confirmed without apology. Things change, Julian. Empires rise and fall. The question is whether we can build something more sustainable than our egos. For a long moment, Julian remained silent, conflict evident in his expression. Finally, he extended his hand. To building something sustainable, then. Cassandra accepted the handshake, feeling the strange symmetry of the moment. In this very office, they had once agreed to found Horizon together, neither imagining the path that lay ahead. As Julian left, Cassandra turned back to the rain-streaked windows. Beyond the glass lay Seattle, the city that had witnessed her greatest humiliation and now her most significant triumph. Yet neither the failure nor the victory defined her as completely as the journey between them, the silent years of reinvention, the building of something meaningful, the evolution beyond revenge to purpose. Empire, she had learned, was less about possession than creation, less about controlling others than mastering oneself. Julian had built his empire on shifting loyalties and expedient decisions, watching it crumble under the weight of its compromised foundation. She had built hers on principles that remained solid even when tested by the temptation of retribution. In the reflection on the window glass, Cassandra saw not just herself, but the shadows of who she had been: the ambitious partner, the betrayed protege, the determined exile, the visionary founder. All versions of herself merging into who she had become. Not merely the woman who had reclaimed an empire, but the architect who had reimagined what an empire could be. Outside, Seattle's rain continued its steady rhythm against the glass, washing away the past, nourishing the future that stretched before her, complex, challenging, and entirely her own.